Hello and welcome to the first of 7 and maybe 8 straight Harry Potter videos. I've been working on this series for about a year and a half. I reread each book twice and watched each movie about 4 times just for this series. I wanted to celebrate these amazing books and this amazing film franchise, and sort of separate the two and show their differences and show how those differences make them so great in their own original way. So it's finally time to put all of my hard work together and make the ultimate book versus movie comparison for each part in the franchise. And today we're going to start with the first book, The Philosopher's Stone, or if you're from America, The Sorcerer's Stone. I didn't know which title I should go with, Philosophers or Sorcerers. I guess Philosophers because that's what the whole world calls it except for America. Although I am American, so maybe I should go with Sorcerers. Yeah, you know what, it doesn't matter. We're going to go with Philosophers. Now, let's get into it. So I'm going to start each of these videos going over the character differences. Let's start with Harry. In the book, he has green eyes, but in the films, Daniel Radcliffe has blue eyes. Funnily enough though, on the first day of shooting, they tried to give Dan green contact lenses, but he reacted really badly to them, so they scrapped that idea and just let him have blue eyes. In the book, Ron is very tall and lanky, but in the film, Rupert Grint is shorter and stockier. In the book, Ron also had a ton of freckles, which again, Rupert Grint does not.
He was tall, thin and gangling, with freckles, big hands and feet, and a long nose. That doesn't really describe me at all, really. Especially the tall part. I'm ginger, that's the main thing.
Hermione is supposed to have buck teeth, but in the movie she does not have that. But again, the filmmakers did try to do this on the first day of filming, just like with Harry's eyes. So she has buck teeth in one scene, which is actually the last scene in the movie, but she does not have buck teeth for the rest of the movie. In the book, both Petunia and Dudley Dursley have thick blonde hair, but in the film they both have brown hair. In the novel, Hagrid is 11 feet and 6 inches, but in the film, the tallest they made him was 8 feet and 6 inches. Lily and James were supposed to be much younger, as they were 21 years old when they died, but in the film, they're both in their mid-30s. And the same goes for Snape. He's supposed to be 31, but Alan Rickman, the actor who played Snape, was 55 at the time of the first film. In the novel, the Weasley twins are shorter and stockier, but in the film, they're tall and lanky, which is sort of the opposite of Rupert Grint and the character that he plays. As for Percy Weasley, he wore glasses in the book, but this was not the case in the film. And speaking of glasses, McGonagall's cat form had square markings on her eyes that perfectly show the square glasses her human form wears, but this was not the case in the film. Now we get to the actual plot. The movie of course starts out with Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Hagrid, but in the book, we do not start out with wizards, but rather with muggles. We follow Vernon Dursley as he goes to work, and he sees all of these weird things happen, like seeing a cat reading a map, which was of course McGonagall. He sees strangely dressed people in robes, and he overhears one of those people saying the name Harry Potter, which Vernon quickly remembers is his nephew's name. Then on the Muggle news, Vernon finds out that owls were acting very strangely, and the news anchor also mentions that there was a downpour of shooting stars. Then we get to where the movie started, and we find out that all of these weird things that Vernon was seeing were witches and wizards celebrating Voldemort's downfall at the hands of Harry, who was now dubbed the Boy Who Lived. When Dumbledore first arrived, he used his Deluminator to put out 12 lights, but in the movie, he only put out 5. In the book, Dumbledore and McGonagall discuss Voldemort, Dumbledore telling McGonagall to call him by his name, but in the film, they do not talk about Voldemort at all. When Hagrid arrived in the book, he mentioned where he got the flying motorbike, saying he borrowed it from Sirius Black, but in the film, we got no explanation as to where he got the bike. Moving forward, in the movie we saw Dudley stomp on the stairs above Harry's cupboard, and then push his head in when Harry tried to get out, but this never happened in the book, that was all made for the movie. In the book, there was a lot of talk about how much Vernon hated Harry's hair that constantly stuck up and was untamed, but that plot point was never mentioned in the film. In the book, we also learn about all the times Harry unknowingly used magic over the years, like growing his hair back overnight after a bad haircut, shrinking a sweater he did not want to wear, and appearing on the roof of the school when running from Dudley and his friends on the ground. In the movie, when Dudley is told that he has 36 birthday presents, he says he had 37 presents the year before.
36, but last year I had 37!
But in the book, Dudley says that 36 is 2 less than last year, so the year before, he actually had 38, 1 more than what he had in the film. Going to the zoo was very different in the book versus the movie. First of all, Harry was not supposed to go. He was supposed to stay with their neighbor Mrs. Fig, but she broke her leg, so Harry was allowed to go. But in the movie, there was no mention of this or Mrs. Fig, who we later find out is a squib that Dumbledore assigned there to watch over Harry. Also in the book, Dudley brought his friend Pierce with them, whereas in the movie it was just the 4 of them. In the movie, Harry talked to the snake first, but in the book, the snake talked to Harry first. In the book, the snake was from Brazil, but in the movie, it was from Asia. In the movie, we have that iconic moment of Dudley falling in when the glass disappeared, only for the glass to reappear and lock him in. However, in the book, both Dudley and Pierce were leaning on the glass, but when it vanished, they did not fall in, they merely jumped back very startled. As the snake left, he said, "Thanks, amigo," but in the movie, he dropped the amigo part and just said, "Thanks." In both the book and the movie, the letter specified where Harry slept, the cupboard under the stairs. In the book, Petunia and Vernon thought that they were being watched, so they moved Harry into Dudley's second bedroom, which we saw in the Chamber of Secrets, but in this movie, we never saw them make that change. In the film, we hear Vernon say that they were going far away.
"We're going away! Far away! Where they can't find us!"
And it then cuts to them in the shack, but there's a lot that leads up to this in the book. We read about Vernon telling everyone to pack, and they go to a hotel. However, while at breakfast, the owner of the hotel came up to them and said that they had over 100 letters addressed to Harry at the front desk, so Vernon once again goes on the run. He drives wildly, trying to shake them off. He stops at a forest, gets out, looks around, then gets back in the car. And he did the same thing for a parking garage and a plowed field. This is when Dudley says the line, "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" But in the movie, this line was said when they were still in their house. Vernon finally stops driving when he goes to the coast and borrows a boat. We then follow them as they go to the island and sleep there, which is where the movie and the book meet up again plot-wise. In the film, we saw Harry draw a birthday cake for himself, but he did not do this in the book as he merely watched Dudley's watch and counted down to midnight for his birthday. When Hagrid entered in the movie, his first words were, "Sorry about that." But in the book, his first words were, "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ya? It's not been an easy journey." Also, Hagrid did not confuse Dudley with Harry like he did in the movie. He knew who Harry was right away, and actually called Dudley a lump when he first laid eyes on him. After Hagrid entered in the film, he bent Vernon's gun with ease, but in the book, Hagrid was even more of a badass as he tied the gun into an entire knot. One of the most famous lines from the film was, "You're a wizard, Harry." But it's actually said differently in the book. It says, "Harry, you're a wizard." In the film, we're told of how Harry lost his parents in the leaky cauldron after shopping in Diagon Alley, but in the book, we're actually told about Harry's dead parents in the shack with the Dursleys there. In the film, Harry and Hagrid leave the shack right away, but in the book, Hagrid sleeps over, and he and Harry then leave the next morning to go to London. In the book, we also follow Hagrid and Harry as they ride the boat away from the shack, and here, Harry learns about the Ministry of Magic, Gringotts, and Hagrid tells Harry how much he would like a dragon, all of which was cut from the movie. Although there was a deleted scene where Hagrid talked about wanting a dragon, but they were on the subway, not the boat.
Oh, I'd love a dragon.
You'd like a dragon?
In the film, Harry came across Quirrell in the leaky cauldron, and he was wearing his turban and was scared to shake Harry's hand, not wanting to touch him. But in the book, he was not wearing his turban at this point, meaning Voldemort was not on the back of his head yet, and in the novel, he did not try to actively avoid shaking Harry's hand. In fact, he actually initiated shaking his hand. While in Diagon Alley, Hagrid got sick while riding through the Gringotts tunnels, but in the movie, he was fine. Harry met Draco for the first time in Madame Malkin's, which was not the case for the film. In the film, he of course met Harry for the first time when they were outside of the Great Hall at Hogwarts. When they met in Madame Malkin's though, Draco did not know that he was the famous Harry Potter. And I'll get back to Harry and Draco's first encounter in a minute. In the film, we only got to go into 2 stores, but in the book, there was a lot more time spent in Diagon Alley. Hagrid took Harry to get ice cream, and here, Hagrid explained Quidditch, the 4 Hogwarts houses, Muggleborns, and dark wizards to Harry. This is also where Hagrid said the line, "There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin," a line that was said not by Hagrid in the movie, but by Ron.
There's not a witch or wizard wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin.
They also went to Flourish and Blots to get Harry's books, they went to a store to get Harry's cauldron, went to an apothecary, got potion ingredients, and then this is when we catch up to the film. In the movie, Hagrid left Harry while he got a wand. Meanwhile, he went out to buy Harry Hedwig as a birthday present. But in the novel, they stuck together for both. Harry was there to pick out the snowy white owl for his birthday, and Hagrid came along as Harry went to Ollivander's. Hagrid even spoke to Ollivander about the wand that was snapped when he was expelled, another detail that was covered in the book but not the movie, although they do cover Hagrid being expelled in the next movie. In the film, Harry tried out only 2 wands before finding the right one, both of which caused a lot of destruction. But in the book, Harry tried out a whole stack of wands, and none of them did any damage like in the film because Ollivander took them out of his hand before they could. All of this of course happened on Harry's birthday, July 31st, and Hogwarts doesn't start until September, so obviously the film skipped over the whole month of August. In the movie, Hagrid took Harry to King's Cross right after shopping, but in the book, Harry went back to the Dursleys for a whole month, and while there, Dudley was terrified of him now knowing that he was a wizard, and Mr. and Mrs. Dursley did not speak to him and just left him alone. Then the Dursleys took Harry to King's Cross in September, and Vernon laughed and left him there, saying that there was no platform 9 3/4. In both the book and the movie, the Weasleys helped Harry get to platform 9 3/4, but the film cut out everything that happened on that platform after he went through the barrier. In between Harry going through the barrier and the train moving, the Weasley twins helped Harry load his trunk, and they saw a scar and realized who he was. Harry then got on the train and watched the Weasley family out the window. The twins told Mrs. Weasley, Ginny, and Ron that the boy they had helped was the famous boy who lived. Harry then watched the twins and Ron say goodbye to their mother and sister, and watched as Ginny cried. In the movie, Ron enters Harry's compartment and introduces himself.
I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley.
But in the book, Fred and George come with Ron, and the twins officially introduce themselves to Harry. And unlike in the movie, Ron does not introduce himself. The twins do it for him, saying that Ron was their little brother. While on the train, Harry interacted with 4 other people that were not in the film: Neville, Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle. In the movie, Hermione came to their compartment and asked if anyone had seen a toad, as Neville had lost one.
Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one.
But in the book, Neville stopped by himself to ask them. Also in the novel, Hermione stopped by not once, but twice. The first time she stopped by, she was with Neville, who had returned to their compartment still looking for his toad. Then she returned again when they were closer to school, and she told them that they should get dressed. Also in the movie, she fixed Harry's glasses, but in the book, that never happened. Coming back to Draco offering a hand to Harry, in the film, this scene took place outside the Great Hall, and this was the first time they met.
I think I can tell the wrong sort for myself, thanks.
But in the book, they had already met, and this interaction took place on the train, not outside the Great Hall. After Harry shut him down, it wasn't the end of it like in the movie though. Malfoy threatened Harry, saying that he'd go down the same way as his parents, and both Harry and Ron shot up, ready to fight, Ron coming to Harry's defense. But the fight was immediately stopped when Ron's rat Scabbers, who we later find out is Peter Pettigrew, bit Goyle's finger as he tried to steal their candy. After he got Scabbers off, the 3 boys disappeared at once. Before the sorting ceremony in the film, Neville found his toad outside the Great Hall during McGonagall's speech.
Trevor!
But in the book, Hagrid found the toad while they were on the rowboats going to the castle. In both the book and the movie, we saw the sorting ceremony, but before we got to that in the book, we heard the Sorting Hat sing a song, but that was not in the film. On screen, we saw 5 people be sorted, but in the book, we saw 25 students be sorted. In the film, we heard Harry talk out loud to the Sorting Hat.
Not Slytherin. Not Slytherin.
But in the book, he did not actually speak out loud, he just thought to himself, and the Sorting Hat read his mind. During the feast in the movie, Hermione asked Nearly Headless Nick how he could be nearly headless.
Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless?
But in the book, this was Seamus Finnegan's line. In the movie, we saw Harry too excited to sleep before his first day of classes, but in the book, he actually fell asleep immediately, literally drifting off while in the middle of a conversation with Ron. In the movie, we see Harry and Ron be late for McGonagall's class, but in the book, there's an added detail. The film left the character Peeves the Poltergeist out, and he was the main reason why they were late, as he purposefully led them in the wrong direction. During the first potions lesson in the book, we see everything we saw in the movie, but in the novel, Snape is even harder on Harry, taking a bunch of points away from Gryffindor and blaming Harry for Neville's mistakes, saying that Harry let him make the mistake to make himself look better. In the movie, we constantly see Seamus blowing things up. But this was a detail added just for the movie. This never happened in the novel. During the flying lesson, the film added the comedic moment of Ron's broom hitting him in the face. But in the book, that never happened. In the movie, we saw this whole dramatic sequence where Neville flies all over the place, hits the castle, and hangs from the statue and slams on the ground. But in the book, he simply flew 20 feet in the air and then fell down right where he had been standing. During the flying lesson, we saw Malfoy take Neville's Remembrall, but in the book, this was not the first time he tried to take it. Earlier in the novel, he tried to steal it from Neville when Neville first got it in the Great Hall, but McGonagall put a stop to it. When McGonagall took Harry to get Oliver Wood, they took him out of Defense Against the Dark Arts in the film, but in the book, they took Oliver out of Charms class. In the movie, we saw Fred and George come up to Harry and scare him, telling him how dangerous Quidditch was.
Our job is to make sure that you don't get bloodied up too bad. Can't make any promises, of course. Rough game, Quidditch. Brutal.
But in the book, they were actually very supportive, telling Harry that they would win the Quidditch Cup for sure that year with him on the team. In the movie, Hermione shows Harry and Ron the plaque of James Potter, Harry's dad, and it says that he was a seeker. But James wasn't actually a seeker, he was a chaser. Many people get confused with this because he was playing with the snitch in the flashback of Snape's worst memory, but that's only because it was easier to steal and more fun to play with than the quaffle, the ball that chasers use. Also, Hermione and the plaque were not what alerted Harry to his father being a former Quidditch player. It was actually McGonagall who told him, saying that James was an excellent Quidditch player himself. On screen, we see the trio go on the moving staircases, which then leads them to the three-headed dog Fluffy, but this played out very differently in the book. In the book, Malfoy challenged Harry to a midnight duel, and just before midnight, Ron and Harry went together to meet Malfoy. However, as they left the portrait hole, Hermione tried to stop them. The portrait hole then shut behind all of them, and because the password changed at midnight, Hermione was locked out too, so she reluctantly decided to go with them. They then run into Neville, who was sleeping on the ground in the hallway because he couldn't remember the password to get in. So the four of them go to meet Malfoy, only to find out that Malfoy had set them up and tipped Filch off so they would get caught out of bed. In the movie, we saw the trio run from Filch because they were on the third floor corridor that was out of bounds. But in the book, it's the four of them running because they were out of bed at night. This is when the four of them enter the locked door where Fluffy was. And again, it's not just the trio like in the film, Neville is also there. Then, just like in the movie, they all escape and run back to the Gryffindor common room. In the movie, we saw Harry get his Nimbus 2000 broomstick right before the Quidditch match. But in the book, he got it much earlier, as he had it when Wood was teaching him the rules of the game. Also, the lesson that Wood gave Harry was on the Quidditch pitch, whereas in the movie, it was just on the grounds outside the castle. In the film, we saw Hermione correct Ron in Charms class.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
But in the book, she corrected the Wingardium part, not the Leviosa part, telling him to make the Gar nice and long. Afterward, when Ron was making fun of Hermione, Hermione bumped into Harry, whereas in the movie, she bumped into Ron. The Quidditch match had many differences when we compare the movie to the book. In the film, we heard the story of Oliver Wood's first game.
I took a bludger to the head 2 minutes in. Woke up in hospital a week later.
But that was not in the book. He merely gave a speech to the whole team before the match that had nothing to do with his first match. The movie also seems to have very different rules about what's a penalty and what's not, as we see Flint kick a Gryffindor player, and see another Slytherin player straight up punch a Gryffindor player, both of which would have been severe penalties in the book, and both of which never happened in the novel. In the book, penalties are given out much more, because at one point, Marcus Flint hits Harry off course, and this resulted in Flint getting yelled at by Madam Hooch, Lee Jordan saying that was cheating, and led to Gryffindor getting a free shot on the goalpost. ghosts. In the movie, we also see Flint hit the bludger at Wood, which is very illegal in the books as you're never allowed to go after the Keeper. We also see the Slytherin players take Angelina Johnson down, which is also very illegal, and had it been the book rules, the game would have been stopped immediately after both penalties. In the movie, when Harry's broom started going crazy, no one on his team tried to help him, but in the book, Fred and George tried to get him to safety, and when they realized they could not do that, they flew under him just in case he fell off. In the movie, Quirrell lost his focus on jinxing Harry's broom when the fire distracted him, but in the book, he was distracted when Hermione herself knocked him over before she even lit the fire at Snape's feet. In the film, we saw Harry be neck and neck with the Slytherin Seeker, but in the book, Harry was unchallenged as he went for the snitch. After the match was over, the trio and Hagrid had a conversation, and in the film, this conversation took place outside on the grounds, but in the book, it was in Hagrid's hut. Also, in the film, Hagrid said he got Fluffy from an Irish man.
I bought him off an Irish feller I met down the pub last year.
But in the book, Hagrid said he got it from a Greek man. On Christmas in the movie, Ron yelled up to Harry from the common room, but in the book, the two woke up together in their own room and they opened presents there. In the film, we only saw one present that Harry received, which was of course the Invisibility Cloak, but in the book, we also saw him get a wooden flute from Hagrid, a 50-pence piece from the Dursleys, a hand-knitted sweater and fudge from Mrs. Weasley, and chocolate frogs from Hermione. In the movie, Ron's sweater had an R on it, but in the book, there was no letter on his sweater, which of course set up the iconic Gred and Forge joke. The movie also skipped over the rest of Christmas Day, which included Fred and George forcing Percy to hang out with them / bullying him all day, them playing all sorts of games, and all of them going to eat the amazing Christmas dinner in the Great Hall. In both the book and the movie, Harry went to the restricted section, and his presence there caught the attention of Filch, and Filch went to Snape. But unlike in the movie, Quirrell was not there with Snape, and I'll come back to the conversation that Snape and Quirrell had later on in the video. When Harry went to the Mirror of Erised in the film, he saw his mother and father standing behind him, but in the book, he had at least 10 other people behind him, all of whom were his deceased family members. In the film, we see Harry run back to the common room to wake Ron up, and he takes Ron down there that night. However, in the book, Ron did not go with Harry that night, but went the following night. When Harry was called by Dumbledore in front of the mirror, a few things were cut from the film. One was Dumbledore saying that he did not need a cloak to be invisible. 2, he revealed that he was down there when Ron was down there with Harry. And 3, they cut Harry asking what Dumbledore saw in the mirror, to which he answered that he saw himself holding a pair of socks, something that was obviously not the truth. In the movie, Hermione was the one to find Nicholas Flamel, but in the book, it was actually Harry. Harry found him on the back of Dumbledore's chocolate frog card, and this then triggered Hermione's memory about the book she had in the film, and that book is what led them to discover the Philosopher's Stone. The film skips over the second Quidditch match that took place in the book. In this match, a lot happened. Snape was the ref, and one of the Weasley twins hit a bludger at him. Ron, Neville, Crabbe, and Goyle got into a fight in the stands, which resulted in Ron giving Draco a black eye, and Neville standing up to Draco and then being knocked out cold by Crabbe and Goyle. And the game ended after only 5 minutes when Harry caught the snitch, leading to Gryffindor winning the match. After the match, this is when we heard the exchange between Quirrell and Snape, which in the movie was right before the Mirror of Erised scene. In the book though, this exchange happened in the Forbidden Forest. Harry followed Snape when he entered by hovering above all of the trees on his broomstick, and when Snape stopped, Harry landed on a branch and overheard the exchange between the two professors. In the film, the trio learns about Hagrid's dragon when they go down to talk to him about the Philosopher's Stone. But in the book, the trio finds out about the dragon when they see Hagrid in the library reading about dragons. It hatches several days later, and when it does, Malfoy follows them and sees it through the window just like in the movie. However, unlike in the film, Malfoy does not tell on them right away. A full week passes as he hangs this over the trio's head. During that week, the trio wrote to Ron's brother Charlie asking if he could take the dragon, and the three helped Hagrid take care of Norbert, but this led to Ron's hand being bitten by the dragon. Ron then has to go to the hospital wing, and Malfoy visits him there. While he was there, Ron accidentally gave Malfoy one of his books that housed the letter from Charlie, giving Malfoy all of the details about Charlie's friends picking up the dragon. In the middle of the night, Harry and Hermione go to the tallest tower of the school and give the dragon to Charlie's friends, getting Norbert off of their hands. Also, right before they had gone up, they saw Malfoy get in trouble with McGonagall for trying to get Harry and Hermione in trouble. When Harry and Hermione went back down though, they realized they left the invisibility cloak up on the tallest tower, and they were caught by Filch. They then find out that Neville had gotten into trouble too, as he had gotten out of bed to warn them about Malfoy tipping the teachers off. In the film, we saw Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Draco get detention and go into the woods. But in the book, Ron had been in the hospital wing during all of this, so he did not have to go into the woods. Neville was there instead. While in the woods, the movie covers Harry's meeting with Firenze, but a lot was cut out of this exchange. In the book, Firenze let Harry ride on his back as he took him back to Hagrid, but while going there, they were stopped by two other centaurs named Bane and Ronan. They got mad at Firenze for letting Harry ride on him like a common mule and for interfering with the stars. I actually made a cool TikTok about this, and I'm going to shamelessly promote my TikTok here. So in the first Harry Potter book, we met Firenze the Centaur. While in the Forbidden Forest, when Harry had his detention, Firenze let Harry ride on the back of him. But this angered the other centaurs, because they had read in the stars that Harry Potter was supposed to die in the Forbidden Forest, which is where he was at this time. They thought that Firenze had ruined this prophecy and interfered. The thing is, the prophecy that Harry would die in the Forbidden Forest was not going to take place during the first book. What they had actually seen was Harry dying during the Battle of Hogwarts when he gave his life in the Forbidden Forest in Deathly Hallows. I make all sorts of fun Harry Potter videos on TikTok, so if you want, give me a follow. Now, let's get back into the video. In the film, Dumbledore gave Harry the invisibility cloak once, which was on Christmas, but in the book, he actually gave it to Harry twice. After Harry had left it on the tallest tower before getting caught out of bed, Dumbledore retrieved it for him and put it on his bed with a note that said, "Just in case." In both the film and the book, Snape approached the trio after their conversation with McGonagall, but right after that in the movie, it cuts to them going down the trapdoor.
Go down the trapdoor. Tonight.
While in the book, there's a sequence of Hermione keeping an eye on Snape as she lurked outside the staff room, but Snape eludes her, and this is when the trio decides to go down that trapdoor. On their way down there in the book, they run into Peeves, and Harry pretends to be the Bloody Baron to scare the poltergeist, some events that did not take place in the film. In the film, Fluffy is already asleep when they got there thanks to a harp that was playing itself. But in the book, Fluffy was awake, and Harry had to play the flute that Hagrid gave him for Christmas to put the three-headed dog to sleep. In the movie, Hermione was calm, cool, and collected when they were faced with Devil's Snare. Meanwhile, Ron was panicking and screaming.
You have to relax. If you don't, it'll only kill you faster.
Kill us faster? Oh, now I can relax.
In the book, however, it was Harry's idea to set the fire, and Hermione said very panicky that there was no wood to burn. Ron then asked her if she had gone mad and asked if she was a witch or not, as he kept a cool head and told her to use her wand to make the fire. This is also another thing that differs from the film, because there, Hermione used to spell for sunshine, but in the book, she used to spell for fire. Also, they don't fall through like in the movie, they actually just run across it, which leads to the next door. While getting the key in the film, Harry was the only one to fly, but in the book, all three of them mounted a broomstick to fly, and it took all three of them to corner the key. Also, in the book, the keys did not go after them like in the movie. In fact, they actually did the opposite, darting and diving away from them, almost like the Golden Snitch. In the movie, Ron sat on the actual knight chess piece, but in the book, the knight left the board and Ron just stood in its place like Harry and Hermione did in the movie. This meant that when Ron was hit by the opposing chess piece, he wasn't just knocked off the knight, but was actually hit directly in the head. Also, in the movie, the chess piece dropped their sword when they won, but in the book, it was the king chess piece who dropped his crown at Harry's feet. In the film, Hermione stayed with Ron while Harry went on, but in the book, Hermione went with him and they left Ron there because there were two more obstacles to get through before they got to Quirrell. First, the two entered a room with a troll, but it had already been knocked out by Quirrell. Then they got to a room filled with 7 potions, and they had to solve a riddle, which Hermione of course completed. Then, this is where Harry and Hermione have that nice exchange that we saw in the film.
You're a great wizard. You really are.
So that bit of dialogue actually happened in the potions chamber, not the chessboard chamber. In the film, Harry just walked free as Quirrell spoke to him, but in the book, Quirrell snapped his fingers, which made ropes wrap tightly around Harry. In the movie, we heard Voldemort say the line,
"There is no good and evil. There a power, and those too weak to seek it.
But in the book, Quirrell says this line, though he is quoting what Voldemort said to him, so technically Voldemort still said this. In the book, Voldemort has Quirrell turn around when he takes his turban off so he can face Harry, but in the film, he does not turn around, and Voldemort instead uses the Mirror of Erised to see him. On screen, we see Quirrell make flames fly all around them, but that never happened in the novel. In the movie, we also see Lily and James appear in the mirror, and we hear Voldemort say that he could bring them back.
We can bring them back.
But this never happened in the book. Voldemort never promised to bring his parents back. Instead, he told Harry that they died begging for mercy, and he told Harry to hand over the stones so that their deaths would not be in vain. Quirrell's death is totally different in the movie than what we saw in the book. First off, in the book, Quirrell got hurt just from touching Harry's skin, no matter where it was. But in the movie, he only got hurt if Harry touched him with his hands. Second, in the book, Quirrell does not fall apart like a rock as he did in the movie. He simply got really bad burns. Third, Harry let go of Quirrell after a while in the movie, but in the book, he held on and did not let go, and that was what made him pass out, while in the movie, the thing that made him pass out was Voldemort going through him. And finally, in the novel, Dumbledore arrived and pulled Harry off of Quirrell seconds before Harry died, saving his life. Oh, and also, Quirrell's body remained there fully intact, but it had horrible third-degree burns all over his skin, so Voldemort left his body, and the burns ultimately killed him. During Harry's conversation with Dumbledore, there were a few parts left out of the film. One thing was Dumbledore explaining to Harry that James, his father, had saved Snape's life, and that was why Snape spent the whole year trying to save Harry, so he would finally be even with his worst enemy. In the movie, Harry was reunited with Ron and Hermione after he was released from the hospital wing, but in the book, he was reunited with them when they came to visit him in the hospital. Hagrid also visited Harry in the hospital, and this is when he gave him that book of pictures, while in the film, he gave it to him at Hogsmeade Station before boarding the train. The film of course ended at Hogsmeade Station, but in the book, it ended at King's Cross where the Dursleys picked Harry up. The trio said goodbye to each other, and Harry mentioned that he'd have some fun that summer, as the Dursleys did not know he couldn't use magic outside of school, a line that was actually said by Hagrid in the movie.
We're not allowed to do magic away from Hogwarts. You know that.
I do. But your cousin don't, do he?
And there you have it, every difference between the first movie and book. Now for the next video, look out for part 2 where I dissect every difference between the Chamber of Secrets book and movie. Thanks for watching, guys. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm just here to give a huge shout out to all my patrons listed to the left. If you want to be featured on the next video, plus get a bunch of other things like previews and behind the scenes, become a patron today. Also, you can follow me on social media to see more of my personal life, like my cute dog Loki. I also do some fun stuff on TikTok and Twitter that I think you guys would really enjoy if you enjoy what I do here on this channel. As always, if you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe, and look out for more great Movie Flame videos on the way.